Just like any operating system, you need to have the ability to add users, add groups, remove groups, or edit users and groups. And Linux is no different from any other operating system. In this section, we're going to understand how users and groups works, how we can see what users and groups exist on a system, how we can create, edit, and delete users and groups, and then we're going to move into understanding permissions. What are the permissions that are relevant to each user and group, how we can view them and change them. Here's your post-exploitation tip. After you compromise the Linux host, you want to find out who you are. As in, are you the root user or are you a user with low privileges? If you're a root user, fantastic. If you are a user with low privileges, your next step is to escalate privileges and get root. So you want to find out who you are and what group you belong to. You want to also find out what other users exist on the system. One of the reasons you want to do that is so you can try and guess the passwords of these users. Naturally, you also want to find what these groups the users belong to. In Linux, every user has an ID. The root has an ID of 0. And when you create new users, the IDs start from 1000. So the first new user you create, the ID would be 1000. The second user, the ID would be 1001, and so on. And every user will belong to a group. By default, when you create a user, it will belong to a group of the same name of a user. So if I create, for example, the user Tom, automatically a group called Tom will be created, and the user Tom will belong to the group Tom. Obviously, that can be changed, and we'll see how to do that later on. So now I'm on a Linux box. How do I find out who am I? Am I root or am I not root? The command is as simple as it sounds, who am I? And it returns an output saying I'm root. Excellent. I want to find out who's logged on to my system and what are they doing. The command to do that is W, just the letter W. And here I can see under the user column, root logged in from 0. 0 is the shell interface. And I also see that a user called Postgres is logged in from 192.168.88.1. And it looks like they're using Nano to edit a file called db-config. Postgres is a type of database. So it could be that a user is connected to that database configuration file trying to edit the file. How do I see what other users are on the system? I can do that by looking at the passwd file. Using the cat command, I can do cat/etc/passwd, and these are all the users that exist on the system. A lot of those exist by default. And this is the Postgres user that I just saw logged in. Notice at the end the /bin/bash. What this tells me is that the user can log in remotely into my system through a remote shell session. If you look at the next user, the DNS mask, you'll see that it says /bin/false. So this user cannot connect remotely to my machine. Any user that can connect to my machine would have the /bin/bash. Actually, I'm the one who's connected to my machine through PuTTY. And as you can see, Nano is open through the remote shell. So if I close this now, and I type who am I, it shows that I am the Postgres user. So I was the user that you see when I type the W command. Let me remove this out of the way. Notice that a lot of these users have the /bin/false. So not many of these users can actually get a shell on the system. Root, however, of course, would be able to get a shell on the system. Alright, let me clear this up. And here's a side note for you. This is something that we will address in the more advanced courses. How you can see the encrypted passwords for the users. These normally are in the /etc/shadow file, which can only be accessed by root. I can cat the file, and if you look here, see that random string of text? This is the encrypted password for the user Postgres and the user Pulse. These are what we call password hashes, encrypted passwords. And in the advanced courses, we'll see how we grab these hashes and we can try to crack them in order to reveal the passwords of other users on the system. That was how you could find out what kind of user you are and what users are connected to your system. I'm going to let you try by yourself how you find out group information. To find out the group that you belong to, you type ID, or you type groups and your username. So in this case, for example, if I want to find out what group Tom belongs to, I type groups and Tom. It's the same as above, only slightly different output. And to see the list of groups on the machine, I look into the /etc/group file. Take a moment and try that out for yourself. When you're done, we can continue with adding and deleting users and groups. Alright, if you're ready to continue, here's how we can add users to our system. There are two ways to add users: using the add user command or the user add command. The add user command will create a new user with the home directory of the user. So both will be created. The user add command will create a new user, but without creating the home directory of the user. Let's see how that works. I'm doing add user Tom. See how it says adding new group for Tom and adding new user Tom? Remember what we talked about? Whenever we create a user, by default, a group of the same name as the user will be created. And also, it automatically created the home directory for Tom under /home/Tom. It asks me to input a password. I type the passwords and also some other information. I can leave that empty if I want to. And I hit yes and enter. I'm going to add another user using the add user command, and I'm gonna call this one Fluff. And I'll go through the same process again. Put a password, enter, and yes. And one last user. This one though, I'm gonna do it using the user add, so you can see the difference. I'm going to do user add Nibbles. By the way, in case you're wondering, these are Tom and Jerry characters. Notice that nothing happened here. You see how the output is very different? The home user wasn't created, we weren't asked to input a password, nothing, it just created a user. Let's see what happened. I'm going to switch user to Tom, and this is done using the su command. I'll type su Tom, and notice how my prompt has changed from root to Tom. Now if I go to home, I type cd and then pwd, it shows me that the working directory is /home/Tom. Which makes sense because when I use the add user command, it automatically created the /home/Tom for me. If I do ls/home, I can see that two home directories are created. Fluff and Tom. Not for Nibbles though. Let's verify this. I'll do su Nibbles and see how the prompt looks completely different. And if I type to cd to home, it says it cannot. There is no /home/Nibbles. It doesn't exist. To exit the prompts, I go exit, and another exit, I go back to root. Now you can see the difference between the add user command and the user add command. Let me verify the users created. I'm going to do cat/etc/password. And look, there they are. Tom, Fluff, and Nibbles are created. And look at the user IDs and the group IDs. Remember what we talked about? New users are created with 1000, 1001, 1002, and so on. And all three of them have the /bin/bash enabled, so they can actually log in remotely into the machine if they want to. Let me clear this out. And now if I want to delete the users, like user creation, there are two ways to delete users, using the user del and the del user. User del, as you might have guessed it, like user add, just deletes the user. Basic stuff. So I'm gonna use that to delete Nibbles. And now if I want to delete a user plus the home directory, I can use the del user, Tom. But I need to specify to the del user and tell the command that I want to also delete the home directory. So I'm going to do -- remove -home space Tom. That's it. And it deleted the user, it deleted the home directory. And if I do ls, there is no longer a Tom directory under home. Let me verify this. I'll do cat/etc/password. And the only new user remaining is Fluff. Now I'd like you to try these commands to add and delete groups. Try to create a new group called cats using the add group cats command. And if you've deleted Tom's user, recreate it and change Tom's group to cats. So when you create Tom, it will automatically by default belong to a group called Tom. Remember? What I'd like you to do is change the group that Tom belongs to the group that you just created, the cats group. And you can do that using the user mod -gcats Tom. And now that Tom group is empty, you want to delete it. You can do that using the del group Tom. When you're ready, let's move on to the next section.